Alrighty, it is 2:30 and we will start with our study session. This is on the Jerry Ivey Pond, just to get some options for what we can do and to perhaps come up with some direction for city staff. So have the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. As a quick recap, I'm sure you all recall we've been talking about Jerry Ivey Pond for a while now. Most recently, a couple months ago, McClure is a consultant that we utilized to help us kind of assess the sources of the problem and possible solutions as well as options at Jerry Ivey Pond. And your last conversation was a study session conversation that kind of focused around the estimated cost of rejuvenating Jerry Ivey Pond, the possibility of other alternate water features, and the decision point that I brought to you, frankly, was how you felt about that price tag, whether that caused sticker shock or where you were at. And if you may recall, renovating the pond was in the $900,000 range with some contingencies that were left open-ended. The feedback that you gave us is not necessarily a pond, but something of quality or a little bit of substance in terms of a water feature. So we left that conversation saying, well, with McClure's help, or actually tasking McClure with identifying what I referred to as a visual preference survey, possibly coming up with some options that they could walk you through, walk the community through, so we could get a better sense of something in the alternative to a pond. The other thing that I would remind you of, and McClure is certainly welcome to correct me, but part of the challenge with the Jerry Ivey Pond is the small watershed, the undersized watershed, just kind of the nature of the runoff and the lack of any treatment, the lack of any discharge. So a pond in and of itself is kind of destined to repeat the problems we're experiencing right now. And so that was another reason that the conversation moved away from a pond and to some type of other water feature. So I think the intention is Jeff Hammond's Parks Director is going to make an initial presentation, then we're going to turn it over to McClure, who's participating by Zoom. And they actually have, for us anyway, an innovative approach to doing some polling of view. And then ultimately, there'll be a survey that can be done to the community to get similar feedback. So I'll turn it over to Jeff Hammond.
Mr. Hammond, how you doing?
Good afternoon, Mayor. Jeff Hammond, Parks and Recreation Director. My intent this morning this afternoon, was to briefly discuss, just kind of recapping what we discussed on September 19th, and then allowing as much time as I could for McClure to go through that visual preference survey. So Jerry Ivey Pond was constructed in 1996 and finished in 97. It's about 3/4 acre in size with an estimated 700,000 gallons. At the time of construction, and it was an average of 4 feet of depth and a maximum depth of 5. Bentonite clay was used to seal the bottom. Retaining walls were constructed of concrete bags. That retaining wall is currently deteriorating, and that sidewalk on the one of the sides is deteriorating. I provided some pictures of some of that construction. I wanted to remind you about the well we have there, which was installed as part of construction. We have a water rights for $2 million a gallon, 2 million gallons per year. And we typically take a reading from that and report that to the state of Kansas. We have that blue-green algae issue with Jerry Ivey Pond. Blue-green algae is based on that cyanobacteria. It tends to proliferate when the water gets above 75 degrees, when the sunlight is allowed to reach the bottom of the pond, providing excessive amounts of nutrients, specifically nitrogen and phosphorus. The cyanobacteria can be toxic to animals and to humans. I wanted to briefly touch on our last conversation on September 19th. We talked about a device that was being used to try to eliminate that blue-green algae. I didn't provide any slides about that. That was a 6-week process. Currently, on October 10th, it was shut off. For post-testing by KDHE and Kansas State Labs. On November 8th, KDHE reported that water didn't seem to improve. And they are currently in the process of testing that water, which is a several-week process with Kansas State Labs based on their backlog of testing. and Bioorganics device is, they're looking to pick up that device. However, they wanted to wait for that final test from Kansas State. Some of the summary of the McClure report, which is provided in your packet as a, at the end of the study session documents, and I wanted to make sure I provided that, but a brief summary of some of their findings. That report they did was on September 9th, and we reported it to you on September 19th. The depth that they found had decreased because of the sediment that had accumulated on the bottom of the pond. Our average depth at the time of construction was 4 feet, and they found an average depth of approximately 3 feet. The deepest point they found was 4 feet. We originally constructed a deepest point to be 5 feet. They found several areas with 2 feet of water in it when their depth survey. The highlights of their findings, as Mr. Scragg mentioned, the standard rule of thumb for lake surface area to watershed area is 1 acre of lake for every 10 acres of watershed. Using that 10-to-1 ratio, the Jerry Ivey watershed would need to be about 3 times larger at 7.3 acres to maintain that current 3/4 acre size. Or conversely, we'd have to reduce the size of the lake by 2/3 to accommodate the existing watershed. And then we would also have a reliance on that watershed to contribute to the health of the pond. Whoops, missed a couple points. And as I previously stated, over the last 25 years, the lake is filled in with approximately 2 feet of silt. And because of that shallow nature of the lake, sunlight is able to reach the bottom to support plant growth, algae growth from that nutrient decay and the increased water temperature. Manual interventions was part of their report. The lake depth, they mentioned a lake depth of at least 10 feet or greater. This would eliminate the need for dredging or excavation for the next 25 years. They recommended ponds, pond aerators, or fountains. And they also recommended, of course, replacing the retaining wall with new. And as Mr. Scragg also mentioned, McClure provided a cost estimates to fix the existing pond. $897,000 was the total. There's also an option 2, which showed if the material that were found was not acceptable or was required special treatment, that it would be an additional cost to treat that special material if they declared it as needing that. Some of the maintenance required that would still require some staff intervention or staff attention, aeration, vegetation around the lake, removing sediment if we're able to capture that with some type of pre-treatment filter, erosion, and then taking care of any fish kill that might occur or waterfowl that might be present. These cost estimates, as a reminder, were with minimal aesthetics. It was really to solve a problem without looking at how it looked or how it would appeal to the public or complement the existing park. Minimal aesthetics. And we also provided, this was a verbal conversation I had with McClure about cost estimates to fill the pond in. Some of the scope of work was pumping down the water, demo of the concrete bags, retaining wall, demoing of the wood pier, finding suitable fill material, compacting those layers of the fill material, testing the area to make sure it meets geotechnical specifications, fixing the sidewalk and grading and seeding the area. They estimated at $100,000. And I asked if we can add the 10% contingency just in case. And that's all I had for my share. and wanted to go through that somewhat quickly, but if there's any questions about that previous report, myself, I think Jim Schuessler is available online, as well as 2 members of his team to go through the visual preference survey, and I can help answer that questions. But otherwise, I will turn it over to Mr. Schuessler.
Great, thank you for the opportunity. This is Jim, and joining me is Joy, Ray, and Jenna Abbott. All 3 of us are going to be participating in this preferential survey. We're going to have, but before we start, is there any questions? Just wanted to confirm.
Nope.
Not.
I think you're ready to go. Yep.
All right, very good. So as Jeff mentioned, there's a couple possible timelines that we're going to proceed through. One, well, the blue on the bottom is the idea that we would, after this meeting in January, we'd host a public opinion version of this. So your feedback today will help us modify and shrink this presentation into something that's available for the public to give opinion on in January. If at the end of January with that final report and all this data is deemed that we should move forward with filling in the pond, we would want to do that as soon as possible, as shown in the gray, so that we could remove any potential hazardous environment that associated with the blue-green algae. And really clean up the area for a future water feature. And then in blue kind of shows that timeline of during the same time, kind of going into a design with hopefully construction of a product that you are happy with here in the summer. So that's why this day is important, to help us create a understanding of what your likes are, and then we will summarize it again here at the end. So at this time, if everyone could use their cellular device or computer to type in that website that is shown there. So it's in essence www.pollev.com, and then our tag for this presentation. Our teams can do that at the same time as you are. This will take a couple minutes. Really only asks a question, and then we won't flash to the next screen, but once you're up and running, you're going to see a question about whether you like coffee or tea or neither better. So you
I unfortunately
quickly
didn't
just
bring my phone, but
so you quickly put in that address, and it goes to our test question, which is what you like best: hot coffee, iced coffee, or no coffee. Because we're remote, Jeff, you're gonna have to help us out and be our eyes and make sure everyone has is getting up and running. Hopefully you might be able to see me, but I cannot see you right now.
We're looking good, I think.
Does anything
All right.
have to be pressed after you select your answer to submit it?
So you can change your answer as many times as you want. I'm going to, we're not doing it. It's just, well, I'll do it. So I'm going to pick hot coffee.
okay. I get the
Jenna
idea.
is going to be getting us to that answer slide momentarily. And then we'll be able to see live the results as it comes through.
And give me a second, I'm gonna refresh this slide. It's showing up on my side, but not on the PowerPoint for some reason. So give me just 1 second.
So I'll add some, I'll fill in the gap a second. So we're gonna do this process. There's really two types of questions. We'll remind you about this as you go. There will be a left-right options, and then we'll get into more of a complicated version of adding text with thumbs up, thumbs down, and then a third type of question, which is more of summary questions. But as you can see here, we had, and again, you could change your vote by hitting the little trash can, and there I just added iced coffee to it. And so we're up and running. And so, yeah, there we go. Jeff, give me the thumbs up when we're ready to start.
I think we're ready to start.
All right, very good. So I'm gonna do an intro slide here real quick, and that is that there are really two types of water features that we're gonna evaluate, study, and talk about today. One is more of a natural water environment. Sometimes water is going vertically, most times it's going falling water around different types of rock formations. These are some of the bullets you can see that are all part of that, whether they're natural or more architectural, and then as well a memorial, because this is the Jerry Ivey Memorial Park. We're gonna showcase some ideas of how Memorial is integrated into a water feature. And so we're gonna go through both of these topics, and the first one is just showing up on my phone. And so Joy Ray, landscape architect with McClure, is going to run us through a series of left, right, or A/B questions.
Yeah, this is Joy. My video's on my end, so I'm not sure if it's on your end that it's not showing up or not, if that's something you need to activate, but I feel like I've done everything I can do.
The little slider on the video.
It's open. Yeah, it's
All
open.
Right. Well, we'll keep going.
Okay.
Then.
So we're just going to look at different types of water features. We'll get down to, you know, the safety aspect of it and things later on, because I know risk is something we talked about early on in our kickoff meeting with the city. So I guess just from the front end perspective, just try and pick like which version of these would you prefer better. So we've got the one on the left, which is the natural backdrop waterfall. So it's not going to be interactive. It's just going to be something you can hear and view, but not necessarily interact with. And then B on the right is something that kids, families can interact with while at the same time still hear it. So if you guys would go ahead and choose which one you'd prefer, A or B. And we'll give you a few minutes.
All right, so when we get to each of the questions, you'll see a very small picture of what we showcased on the left, and then the results as they come in. If you need us to go back or something like that, Jeff, give us a holler. But in general, and in all actuality, Jeff, give me the thumbs up when we're ready to move to the next slide.
I think we're ready to move on, Mr. Jim.
And then one last thing, all of this is being recorded, not as a video, but as results that will be put together in a draft document report for us.
Okay, so we'll move to the next one. So in this one, you see what we're looking at are the flowing stream for option A with pools there. So longer, more interactive. Option B is just the stone mountain with a waterfall in it. So if you could choose on this one, which one you'd prefer, the flowing stream or the cascading mountain, that would be great. Okay, looks like we've got results coming in, so that's good.
Pretty equal.
And
All right.
changing, that's awesome.
Changing. All right. No cheating.
All right.
All right.
We'll move to the next one.
Too much forward. Too forward.
Okay. On this one, the options that we're going to be looking at are, let's see, Jenna, can you go back one? Yes, here we go. The water wall or the interactive water features. So again, we're looking at cascading water on the left. Sound, you can walk by it, you can view it, you can't necessarily play in it. And then on the right, we have the small stream, which kids can adjust water level and play with it and interact with it that way. So make your choices there. Okay.
Yeah, mine's not letting me choose either one, actually.
Okay, we'll pause until we figure that out.
It's worked up to this point. Just the whole thing? Okay, it took.
Okay, all right.
Dead spot on my screen, I guess.
Everybody's good? So we'll move forward, if that's the case. Okay, the next one we're looking at is going to be the organic water wall or the more architectural water wall. So again, natural versus something that's more built, constructed, still sounds of water, just different looks. Okay. It's fun to see your responses, so.
We don't want 50-50. Someone would have to break the tie and change their vote if that was the case.
All right,
All right.
when you're good on your end, let us know and we'll move to the next one.
I think we're ready.
Okay, we'll move on. Okay, the next one we're looking at is the natural flow again, or something, again, more architectural. So we're still using natural features of the limestone, the flowing water, but it's a little bit more constructed, a little more formal than your flowing stream on your left. And in this one, we're also introducing the jets and whether or not you think you might prefer that look. Okay. Big decision. All right, we'll move on to our next one. If we're going too fast, just stop us. We can work with that. All right, so on this version, we have our, stacked stone, flowing water, loud sounds on the left with more formal jetted water flow, a little bit softer experience on the right if you can choose which one you prefer there.
Looks like it's settled in.
Okay. We'll move on. This next one we're looking at, you'll notice they both have water jets in them, so that's not what we're asking here. The question is, do you prefer the natural basin that's shown on the left, or the more architectural, still again with the natural elements, but a little bit more formal on the right?
And specifically, like this being the top basin, like how do we start the feature? Do we start it as a pool, general pool, or in drops, or is it something big, more robust?
Active, yeah.
It's hard to vote on what I like when I don't know a price tag. I mean, this is kind of,
Yeah, that's
well, I
what
like
I've been waiting to say.
I like a Mercedes too, but I don't drive one, so.
We will design something with your likes that fits the budget. So yeah, so this is just dream and we'll make something work.
We'll go more into that in question answer to you.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
this is
I think we're
Okay,
good on this one.
so we'll move on to the next one. All right, so with most water features, there's two ways. Your water is either all above ground or it's underground. A lot of the ones we've seen with the streams, that water is above ground. The cascading waterfall, it could be underground storage, but regardless, it seems like you have to, a lot of times, figure out how people are going to play in it with fountains. I mean, we're drawn to water. It's just natural. So do you prefer your water above ground or all the way, mostly stored underground in a tank? Okay, we will move on if you guys are ready.
I think we are.
Okay, we're going to move to a different type of question now. The next images we're going to show you are going to be like, how do you feel about a certain thing? And you can put in your comments. So we're going to practice that here so we can sort of get the hang of it. So share your thoughts on how you feel about a peppermint mocha latte from Starbucks. You can put in up to 4 choices. So 4 thoughts. And then if you like it or dislike it, you can vote it up or down on the list as people start adding things.
make sure you see the yellow button on your phone that says load more responses. So like, you know, as more show up, you can add all of them and then start giving the thumbs up or thumbs down after you kind of. So on these questions, you don't have to answer. You can wait and see whatever people can just tag in, or you can be one of the leaders that actually writes an answer. And as you can see, they start to move around as more people like the answers. But this load of questions is going to invoke emotion, right, Joy?
Right, correct. So hopefully you understand what we're doing here. So does anybody have any questions at this point about how this part's going to work?
I think we're ready. I think we're understanding it.
Okay, we will move to the next images.
You're missing out, Carl. I think it's kind of pointless without a cost associated with it.
And Joy, I'm going to stop sharing and reshare to try to get these images
Okay.
up on the screen for you guys. There you go.
Okay, thanks. So this fountain waterfall feature, we're going to start in the left-hand corner over there, the street view. As you can see, there's paths that wind through next to the water feature. They cross in several places. There's natural crossings. There's a bridge. It's stair steps, as you see on your right. It drops in elevation. You've got your natural waterfalls, lots of plants, things like that. Can you share your feelings on what you think visitors would experience visiting this park?
And if it's something you could see at Jerry Ivey, this is where you can say the scale is not appropriate, or it would be amazing in your community.
Yeah, don't forget to push your button so you can see the other responses coming in and vote yes or no for those. Those are good thoughts. So we'll give you some minutes to keep putting those in there. Jeff, when you feel like you guys are at a good point on your end, let me know.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is you propose doing a public survey, is this the format you're going to present? Is this kind of a test for that, or is this
Jim,
just
I'll let you go for that one, Jim.
No, this is not the format. This is a lot more live, interactive, and stuff like that. We're gonna have to create a stagnant environment that allows it to be open at any time of the day for about, let's say, 10 days. So based on this information, we're gonna take, top ideas, top projects, provide more data related to them, because it's gonna have to be able to stand on its own. And then use a different type of software called SurveyMonkey, which allows us to create in essence, a web page that you can provide the link to through your social media channels and others to be able to have and allow feedback over the time that it's open.
So the purpose of this is just to get us four commissioners' thoughts?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, on what you're looking for to sort of narrow down. We've got a whole range of projects just to get feedback so we can make sure that we're working towards a goal that you are wanting to see.
I think we're good with this one.
Okay. All right, so on this one, it's located in Steamboat Springs, Colorado. It's a stream that runs through the city. We could do this with pumps that could move the water and keep it flowing. What are your thoughts here on this one about what visitors might experience as they're interacting with the water or walking along the edge, or, is this something important to your community to touch the water or interact with the water? Just thoughts on those feelings. Especially, I guess, since they're used to interactive with the pond now, I guess my wonder is, will they want something that they can still interact with? Okay, when you guys are ready, let me know and we'll move to the next one.
Are we good on our end?
But 10 seconds more.
Okay.
I'm guessing how the staff is voting.
All right, I may have been the last one. Looks like we're ready to go.
I think we're ready to move on.
All right. So we'll move on to the next city garden in St. Louis, Missouri. This is more architectural fountain, more built. Still, you have the running water. As you can see, with any fountain, you know, you're talking about how people are interacting with it. So give us your thoughts on this one. Do you like the water? You're starting to see lights in this picture. What do you think about night lighting, especially if it's a backdrop to the gazebo that's going to be there? There's a sculpture in the background, it looks like to me. Jim, you can clarify on that one. You've been there. Yeah, so, you know, are you interested in art? Things of that nature.
I guess in school, anybody still working, raise your hand. All right, we're ready.
Okay. Now we're going to move into the memorial water features that we've gathered pictures on. They generally incorporate art, sculpture, and/or flagpoles. There are generally spots provided for thought and reflection throughout the designs we're going to look at. And oftentimes, since they are memorial, they're providing plaques or inscriptions to inform the public viewing it about the person or incident that required that to come forward as a memorial. They can, a lot of times, offer noise, but oftentimes you'll find them as a quiet, reflective place as well. And then again, with the plaques, you can find these as an educational opportunity as well, either to talk about the plants that are in the design or the history behind the things that occurred. So we'll look at the first one, which is Reconciliation Park in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It is a memorial it memorializes the race riots that happened in Tulsa, where a lot of the African-American neighborhood was burned and lots of people were killed in this situation. When you enter the park, you can enter from a couple different ways. You see the parking back there, but you'll notice that there's a water feature behind the Hope artwork and sculpture there. That is the loud backdrop water, cascading water feature to the park, and you can hear it throughout. But then as you move through the park, there's a healing garden walk. There are other sculptures to view with a less slower, lower sound water feature. And just different ways to interact with this one. So if you could give us your thoughts on the two water features and what you think there, especially since this is Jerry Ivey Memorial Park, and just your thoughts on those. There are also plaques that you can see around that main sculpture that give history of the acts that occurred too. So go ahead and we'll talk about this one for a minute.
we might be wrapping up on this one.
Okay.
Well, I get the next two. This is so much fun. You guys are providing great comments. We just have a few more on this topic type. This is a project I designed in Merriam, Kansas. It's both an entry to the city. So there's a top pool where you can see the Merriam sign that has a fountain that kind of drops into a pool, concrete basin, that then enters into a little bit of a winding weir into the lower basin, the third basin, which was, we worked with a sculptor to design 3 bronze sculptures representing the bears that escaped a zoo about 100 years or more ago. But again, a small kind of entry to a city associated with their chamber of commerce with plants, and had different signage representing the history of the city, about 10 different plaques spread along a little path with landscaping. So all right, we about there?
Yep.
All right, this one is the memorial of the FDR memorial. It was one of my favorite memorials in the Washington, D.C. area. You should see it in person. It reflects his 4 stages of his life. And in essence, you know, everything from the Dust Bowl to, you know, his life in office and stuff like that. There are different fountains. That is the point of this, as well as perhaps some history, signage, sculpture that's referenced within that. But again, this pretty much reflects some larger pieces of granite. In our case, it would be limestone, as it creates noise and backdrop to the story.
Yeah, where is this at in Washington? I've never seen this
Yeah, it's
memorial.
off by itself on the other side of the tidal pool. It's kind of remotely
The other
behind
side
it.
of what?
The other side of the tidal pool. It's a long walk around the outside of the pool.
Down there by the cherry blossoms, where they're popularly known as, would be kind of south of like the Korean Memorial by a walk.
Okay.
So you have the Vietnam, then south of that's Korean, and then farther south of that would be this one.
Do we have public art or sculpture and storage, or is everything that we have out?
We may have one or two items, and I'd say that just because of a passing conversation I had with Brad Anderson, but as we get community art through the sculpture tour, we are looking for locations, trying to look for a fit, the art and the location, but we are looking for additional locations.
So it just comes to mind possibly there's a concept for that in this someplace.
Yeah, I think a designated area certainly could be a possibility, or even, we talked about a sculpture walk or a sculpture garden at one point. We've kind of been locating them throughout the community, but some communities have a collection in one area.
We do have that one piece over there is between the pond and the equipment and stuff. It's that turtle we had that was bought by the Friends of Sculpture Tour that sits over there that could fit into something like this too. That's over at your house.
Very good. Let's keep moving before we run out of time.
All right, so this is the Veterans Honor Memorial in Chesterfield, Missouri. We wouldn't necessarily be looking at the same materials. Granite can be expensive, so think limestone, but as far as plants and the experience as you're walking up to it, being able to see the different levels, the flags, the lights, signage, plaques. Let's hear your thoughts on this one.
I probably could guess their thoughts after reading all the responses. But we'll let them answer. I think it was a good summary picture. I think we're getting some good
Yeah, I would
summary
agree.
comments here.
Some good feedback.
All right, let's get to the last one, I think.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the Mercy St. John's fountain in St. Louis. Whether, again, this doesn't have to be, we're not talking about the whole park, but you see the bowl fountain that the child has their hand in, a bridge that another kid is crossing, or the limestone walls with the stepped waterfall. You can see the plan overall, but those are just different pieces within that plan. But are there certain aspects of this that you like, ones that you don't, ones that you would prefer over others? We'll populate those answers.
We might need to flash back to the pictures. There's a lot going on that.
Yeah, there is. This is also, this space can be used for movie nights. It can be used for a gala. If you want to look at overall space, it's very fluid in its uses as well.
A lot of good synergy here.
Agreed. Yes, your feedback has been great.
All right, why don't you introduce the next and last group of questions?
Yeah, so we have 3 more slides, and these are back to just choose your favorite. So out of these 3 pictures on this slide, which do you most envision at Jerry Ivey if you had to pick one of these? Again, we're not sticking you with something. We're just trying to get your feelings on what you would most prefer.
Yeah, this is back to the pick and choose, not write your emotion. So.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one. So out of these, which are the memorial type settings that we looked at, if you go the memorial route as we work through design, which water feature most interests you out of these pictures? This one is a little tougher.
Not really.
Okay, and we'll move to the last one. Out of these more natural type water features, which one do you most envision at Jerry Ivey? All right, all. I think your feedback has been pretty great. So I will turn it over to Jim here and let him wrap up with our next steps.
So I tried to hint at this earlier, and now this is kind of a more exact what we're going to do. We're going to simplify the selections based on your recommendations tonight to build out a SurveyMonkey survey that we hope to have available at the 1st of January. Not literally January 1st, but early in January. We'll start to engage whoever you'd like us to be ready to roll this out. Perhaps your chief information officer or someone like that to be able to understand, what this is going to look like, where it's going to be posted, how we want to get the word out on that. We'll have that open for perhaps 10 days. So that by perhaps maybe the 5th through the 15th, we can get information and then have our results summarized by the end of January. So that then we can determine what to do with the current lake and, and if the decision is to move forward with the fountain, we'd love the opportunity to talk to you further about designing it. So I think with that, we're going to open up for any questions and answer with whatever time you have left. We were supposed to be at 1 hour and we're right around there.
Any questions from up front?
I guess this question is for them, and then we'll talk. A lot of the features you had show, like waterfalls. The ground we're looking at is flat as Kansas can be, and so I'm not sure how we make some of that work in a way that's not overly expensive. Could you explain that?
Yeah, so there is at Jerry Ivey grade change on the west side between the current lake, because there's a wall that creates 3 feet, and then you have the elevated sidewalk, and then you have another wall on top of that. So inherently, there is, if we build it along the west side, so it's something that could have a lawn space where the lake is actually be a lawn space for active use or picnic use, stuff like that. But then ultimately we could use the existing hillside, which is from water level where it's at now to the memorial that it sits at right now, potentially 10 feet. And, you know, we could always build up, as some of these pictures showed, to get a little bit more. So again, I could easily see how just working with existing grade and some boulders, we could get a 10-foot drop over one or multiple locations.
And then something like that, you have pumps that recirculate that water. Would that be correct?
That is correct. Many of these designs include a pump system with fountains ranging from $30,000 to $60,000 for just the plumbing equipment. Having the vault, having an underground environment that you showcase, that vault space is approximately $3 a gallon installed. And so, or if it was, we created a base into the sky, we can save some money on that. But again, how we build that so that we read, keeping people out of it is important, but we'll confirm that as a summary. So there are different systems that we can have. You know, each boulder is about $500 installed. And so, you know, we start working our way towards your future budget.
On the budget, that $900,000 price tag, is that kind of the base price for a lot of this stuff we looked at? Looked like several $1 million.
No, absolutely not. There was a range, that is correct. That range on some of the low end, yes. We believe that you can have your budget for all the ones that were shown. No, well, I don't even want to say that. If you were to set a budget between less than the lake price, which was $900,000 to $1 million to save money, so we're at this $300,000 to $600,000, you can get a very nice environment there, and we would be happy to showcase some of these. Some of these are older examples, so 10 years or more older that we did show, and so we'd escalate the price over what those are today. But again, we've gotten updated pricing on plumbing systems. We figure out what kind of wall systems we want to have, what kind of collection systems, and we can set a budget.
And I assume that it's also scalable. So some of those pictures are a concept, but they may be at a larger scale than we might propose in Salina.
Yeah, very much. So we showed all public environments because it's important, you know, safety, security is an issue. And in all public environments, you could argue, hey, that doesn't look very safe. But again, we would want to engage your insurance on some of these ideas if that's so the case. But ultimately, all of them are scalable. And like I said, from fountains to tanks or amount of water flowing through the system to length of wall. The location that is kind of in that same area that I've been discussing, something that could be viewed at from the gazebo that is elevated, but ultimately built into that hillside, is matching up with your naturalized idea.
Were these all designs that your firm did?
No, not all. We have contacted multiple aquatic design plumbing companies that Hydrodramatics is one of my friends out of St. Louis. So many of them were provided by them. But yeah, no, from DC to Texas to Oklahoma to Kansas City area, St. Louis area, we tried to show you a mix across multiple regions.
Yeah, I kind of am following the lines of Commissioner Longbine and the fact that I think we need to, I mean, I guess I'm looking to other commissioners because, for one, I'm for filling in the pond. that's got to be our number one thing we do. And then we'll come up with, if we do agree on a water feature. But I think we have to set the budget. Because if not, it seems like every time we don't set a budget, we get a feature that we're looking at that's considerably more than we're wanting to spend. So I think as a commission, we need to give them the budget to work towards. As I look to fellow commissioners to a certain,
I'd like to see ranges of options. I wouldn't worry about the price tag right now because it's scalable. You have, when we do projects, we have add alternates, we remove things. Yeah, this is a chance to dream, and I'd rather do the dreaming first and see, what our pocketbook can afford. Because we're not building something that's going to be there for 3 years. We're building this for the next, I hope, 50 years at least. And
yeah, that would be the other question. What's the life expectancy of some of these? And then is there what would an annual maintenance and cost be to the city to keep some of these up and going for the entire year?
Well, we're definitely save money on if people aren't touching the water where we're adding a chlorination to the water for health KDHE requirements. So more of a naturalized system, or then at that point maintaining bacteria levels that self filter themselves, as well as filter stuff like that. Leaves are probably your biggest challenge, and so there is some level of trash and leaf removal on any of these systems. That becomes your largest daily or monthly task. As that relates to it, the pump systems would be discussed. In general, they're all underground or in a tank or in a building kind of thing, depending on which direction we go. We usually do shut down our fountains and winterize them during the winter, unless you think that you'd want to have it running year round. That takes in a lot of chemicals that most of our clients don't want to do. So again, it is a system that's drained down and so winterized, and pumps are in essence detached from hoses to allow the system to freeze and then start up in the spring, similar to an irrigation system.
thank you. Is there a wrap-up person?
Yeah, I'd offer a couple of decision points. One is the timing of filling in Jerry Ivey Pond. And, we can go at this one of two ways. We can keep the pond concept in the conversation, which means we need to continue to maintain the pond in its current form until we make a final decision, or we could break this into two decision points and say, either now or at some point, we are committed to moving past a pond to a water feature and break this into commencement of filling in the pond while we make final decisions about the water feature. So I guess that'd be question number one I have for you, is your receptivity to proceeding with filling in the pond versus whether you want to do additional due diligence before we do that.
Based on the timeline, my vote is fill in the pond and get that started.
But from the comments we just heard, if part of the current wall of the pond would become some of the elevation, I would get the design of the feature first, because you might not be filling in the whole thing.
In my opinion, we fill the pond in and then
Dig it out.
look forward to what other, what the research can bring us in the way of information that the public may want. I still am concerned that $1 million is more budget than we should dedicate to that spot. So I'm looking for something that's a lower dollar cost. And I think we need time to plan for that. There are enough other competing projects in the Parks Department that I don't feel like $1 million is justified there. So some type of downsizing. My feeling was that we'd look more in the direction of a memorial than and possibly with a water feature, but then a full-blown water item. So
But now,
I would favor filling in, getting that part of it completed, knowing that it's safe, and then working forward towards some other kind of aesthetic improvement there.
but some of the scalability would depend on elevation drop. And I just
Yeah, I
hate
think
to
that's-
pay money to fill it in and then pay money to dig it back out again.
There is more elevation drop just with the lay of the land than you might realize, but I think that's a good question for McClure. If we were to proceed with filling in the pond, is that imprudent if we want to take advantage of some of that elevation as part of a future water feature?
I do think they're two separate two separate items. The idea with filling it in is taking a lot of those sand bags of concrete and throwing it in the hole as appropriate fill, and then bringing in the different layers. So a lot of those walls would then come in on themselves to be used as fill. The wall idea then becomes, is it a straight wall where we need to get up 5, 7, 9 feet in a vertical plane behind a series of boulders, or is it really a series of terraces? And my guess from what I've heard is that it's more, you're interested in more of a series of terraces of water falling over multiple points, not as one big moment. In either situation, I do think there's still a separate topics that can be dealt with separately. I also want to throw in that we could, part of the question to the public is, are you okay with trading out a lake for a water feature? And that question could be part of the survey as well in January.
Yeah, I think the lake question becomes a budget question because, correct me if I'm wrong, we're at 900,000 or more. It's kind of our starting point to just retain the lake in its current configuration.
It doesn't cost anything to dream, as the mayor said. And I think filling it in, it's going to have to be demoed. The concrete's going to have to come out. That sometimes I don't think that cost is going to be totally lost by demoing that and filling it in. Where would the money come from if we were to dream and do one of these?
So it would turn to be the Park Master Plan funds, which we are spending on other things, but we have a dedicated dollar amount coming out annually from the sales tax fund. So first thing I would do is say we'd take the estimated cost, we'd amortize it over the remaining life of the sales tax and figure out what that is in terms of an annual debt payment.
Well, I think short term, I agree with Commissioner Ryan that we have our hands pretty full right now, and we need to wrap up some of these projects before we take on a major like this. So I would concur with filling it.
Well, although now, we've known the whole time that we had to do something with Jerry Ivey, so this is not an unexpected expense. I mean, we knew we were going to spend money doing something. So this is not money that was not in the master plan. A lot of things in the master plan that we haven't funded yet, but this is not a surprise expenditure.
It's not,
We've been
but
talking about it for 3, 4, 5 years.
it is something that we have to move on, because I'm just not comfortable with leaving
And when you say move on, you mean filling in the pond?
the health hazard with
Right.
the algae needs to go away.
Right, but where's 3 to 4 months delay? I mean, it's been a 10-year problem. I don't see rushing to fill it in before we have possible options.
Well, and I agree.
It's wintertime.
I agree letting the public weigh in on this, and in the end, that's who's going to pay for it.
I mean, we can always fill it in. I mean, we can do that 12 months a year. But we've been waiting 5 years, and we're going to rush at the end and then maybe dig out some of the
I
stuff.
did
we
go
fill
over
in.
there and I seen the ducks didn't ever come back. If they were ever going to come back, this is when they would. And They took a rain check on Jerry Ivey Park.
I think you are, as a governing body, you are at the crux of the key decision points here. And what I heard McClure say is if we give them a budget, they can design to it. I think I'm hearing some consensus about we're moving on from the pond to something else. I guess my other question for you is there consensus that within some budget to be determined, a replacement water feature needs to be part of the discussion, or fill it and not replace it with a water feature is the alternative? I think we've discussed that previously and focused on something in its place, and the feedback we got from the prior survey was supportive of a water feature, but I think that was without knowing how much they cost.
So I'll say again, I think we need to fill it. That's action number one. And then I do not believe that if we have to move more earth around, that those kinds of things are going to significantly impact a future aesthetic improvement there, whatever it turns out to be. So now, I don't think we're going to go for $1 million pond or river walk there, but I could see it for what is allowed in our Parks and Rec budget in the future. We'll find something nice there and incorporate what the public would like to see there, whether it's water or memorial.
Well, that's what I'd like to see, what the public wants to see there before we go spending six figures to move anything. If we're going to find out what the public wants in the next 90 days.
We did that. We've done that once. We did a survey, correct?
We did. I think that was done without a connection to cost.
To cost, yeah.
What was the option water feature versus flat park?
Yeah, a majority of people wanted a water feature, but again.
But I don't think the idea of a memorial entered into that prior discussion. If we're talking about the meeting that Parks and Recs had in their a monthly meeting that they had invited the public to discuss options for the lake. It was, the idea of a memorial was not part of that. It was not part of the memorial.
Remaining were some type of body of water, pond, if you will, and had amenities around it. And those were the choices that were people voted on. But it was, and I'm sorry, Mike, it was
Personally,
also
at this
without
point, I think that the respect to the Jerry Ivey and the memorial aspect there, I think it could be expanded to represent all first responders, and a water feature could. Those two concepts could be combined, but it's again early on in the discussion.
And that process more than a year ago now didn't include any information about what kind of problems we had and like that we know now as part of any discussion topics. So now we have that information about the faults of the existing body of water, and so that was not part of that exercise a year ago.
Well, I have said for some time we can't keep kicking this can down the road. And I agree with that concept of breaking this into a two-part plan. And, you know, do something nice at some point, but get some of these projects done that we have in the works right now. One thing I thought about when we were talking about the watershed, you know, there's not a lot of watershed, but that is a flood-prone area. Filling that in, what effect is that going to have? Where's that water going to go?
Everything that flows to it now is, you know, it's bounded by streets and curb and gutter on all sides. And so it runs through the pond. If there is any runoff, it runs out the east side of Jerry Ivey and under Ohio Street. So there is a discharge path there that it could be directed to.
I guess I'm thinking about our new ball fields across the street.
Yeah, I think all that's self-contained. It all flows from west to east, and so we pick up the water off of the street. It goes around the Jerry Ivey pond currently, And the only thing that's going into Jerry Ivey is that, that small watershed within that kidney bean shape within the streets there in the park. So, what I think I'm hearing is, I don't hear you all unanimously saying the same thing, but I hear the majority of you saying, let's proceed with pursuing filling in the pond, and then let's also pursue surveying and finalizing a water feature concept. And
How long would it take to fill in the pond? I saw,
yeah, the timeline they had earlier in the presentation was about 3 months.
and how long would it take to get the survey results?
Well, can we go back to that slide?
It was end of January, I believe. McClure said that they would have the results ready to show the staff.
So, I just see us digging out some dirt that we're going to be filling in for, a 7 week window. That's 42 days during the wintertime when no one's going to be probably using it much anyway.
They're not going to be using those walls for any part of the feature because they're already, deteriorating.
No, I'm just thinking if part of the current pond becomes the lower elevation upper water feature. I mean, it's already dug out 4 feet.
I still see that way down. I still don't see that happening in the near future. So I think our primary concern, and it's been mine and I voted to fill it in last time we discussed this, is we need to take care of the hazard that it is, and that's one being that blue-green algae we can't seem to get rid of. Oh, yeah, sorry, thanks. My main concern is we still have the blue-green algae we're not getting rid of. The walls are deteriorating. I think we need to, I said this last time, I still believe that pond needs to be drained, needs to be filled in, and we'll worry about something. And I'm not even sure that fits into our budget in the next 12 to 24 months.
Well, I think
With all the things we have going on with the river and Parks and Rec. And we need to look at Parks and Rec, depending on what we do. There's, when you look from a manpower, some of those features took manpower to keep that looking like we want it, and we're going to have to address that at some time. So I don't think we can do a survey, but I don't think that survey has us breaking ground and doing something new by June.
No, but if it's going to be a decision that's going to be put off 10 years, then, that is a neighborhood park, first and foremost. And
it's used like a neighborhood park every day without the water, because you don't go near the water because it's hazardous.
Right. Now,
And either way around this, the water needs to go away and the walls need to come down.
now, can the pond be drained? I know some water come back if it rained, but is there a way to just drain it and leave a permanent outflow?
We could drain it. I don't know that the elevations cooperate to keep it
Drained. Okay.
It is a small watershed, but it collects the water within that watershed.
Doesn't rain that much around here.
It would if we drained it.
Again, I'm in favor of just filling it in, making it clean, and starting over fresh, so.
I think there's enough consensus that we can, and there'll be a decision point. There will be a vote that'll have to take place in terms of that contract. So we can get started on that, and simultaneously get started on community survey and trying to develop a scope that fits our budget and see how those two timelines.
Thanks, Mr. Hammond. And thanks, I guess your whole team online there. Thank you all for spending an hour and a half with us.
We appreciate the opportunity and look forward to moving this forward.
All right, thank you. We are adjourned till 4 o'clock. It is just after 4 o'clock. This is December 5th, 2022. The Salina City Commission weekly meeting. And ask the city clerk if the Kansas Open Meeting Act required notice has been properly provided.
Yes.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mayor Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Hoppick,
Here?
Commissioner Linkowitz, Commissioner Longbine,
Here.
Commissioner Ryan.
Here.
Right. All who are able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we're going to proceed straight to the consent agenda.
Item 5.1, approve the minutes of November 28, 2022.
Mayor, I move we approve the minutes of November 28th, 2022.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes of November 28, 2022. Any questions, corrections? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Administration 6.1.
Item 6.1, accept donated property from the YMCA for Phase 2 of the Smoky Hill River Greenway Trail and authorize the city manager to accept Phase 1 property and execute 6 agreements with property owners upon fulfillment of all prerequisites under the purchasing policy.
Mr. Stack.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. This is good donation, large piece of property here from the YMCA, kind of in partnership with the Friends of the River and the project. Talked about this a few times already over the last few years. Called it the Greenway Trail project. Connects a trail over here on Ohio, east of Ohio. There about the just north of Crawford is where we're at. Goes all the way around. The YMCA property is kind of all through here. Pretty large piece of property. Oddly enough, we have a park right in here, so we didn't have to actually ask for property from the Y in this area. But this blue line basically is what we're talking about today. This is what they, the board of directors at the Y is in partnership with the city, would love for us to do anything we can to a trail in there. And so we're looking forward to building the next phase of this project. Phase 2, I guess is what we call it, of a concrete trail basically in that area. We've cleared trees a year ago in this area. We have negotiated, well, I've been negotiating for a while, but most of the properties in here have been amenable to property discussions about, the same, basically that's what we're authorizing is so I can finally get to that next step. It's easy when they just donate, but there's other, they may not all donate. So that's why I thought we have to authorize the manager today to help us with the purchasing policy. And as we talked about in the blue sheet, I guess I'll just go through it a little bit here. We kind of have an agreement with the Smoky Hill River, Friends of the River group to gain the access, the property acquisitions for these other 6 properties. And so we're looking at Central Kansas Mental Health, Schaefer Properties, Elmhurst Properties, Dennis Jet and Coxel there, and then the Wells property here, as well as the Storage Mart LLC is the name of who owns this, but it's the Long MacArthur group that runs that Kawasaki dealership, I guess is what we call it. No, not Kawasaki. I guess it's just a used car. I can't remember the name of that car lot, but anyway, those are the properties we're talking about. And so a lot of this property in this area it's not developable. It's in the floodplain. It's in in the river channel basically, so it's not valuable property. So when I say kind of what the acquisitions are going to be, hopefully pretty minimal. That's the goal. I mean, if it gets to be more than that, then of course the city manager will have to come back to you with anything over the purchasing authority. But at this point, we believe they're fairly minimal. Most people are amenable to the project. Quite a few are thinking about donating. And then If they're not, then they just have some requirements for making sure we keep some trees or, don't affect their what they bought the property for. So make a buffer type of, those are the kind of questions we've talked about with this group. So it's a lot more maybe than the blue sheet says, but I thought I'd explain where we're at and where we'd like to get to. As the Y has donated this property, we do have a design here for phase 2. We've kind of worked with our in-house staff to use, they've already got a trail in there today. It's kind of overgrown. It works, but it's pretty overgrown. So we're following a lot of that path currently, and we should be able to clear the trees, do a tree clearing project there, as well as move forward eventually with a concrete trail project in that whole area. And then as we get properties here to the east, hopefully connect that with the Ohio hike and bike, or the Ohio sidewalk really at the end there. So it's a longer process getting property. This is fee title, and it's insurable, and it takes a little bit, or warranted title. It just takes a little longer to get. So just thought we'd try to fast track that process by giving the manager the authority to do that. So I'll stand for questions.
There's one clarification I'd like to ask you to make, Dan. You've referred to this as a sizable property, and the Y's property is sizable.
Yeah, it's
but could you describe what's being dedicated, just so there's no confusion about?
Sure. Yeah, and I have the next page. Hopefully shows that. There we go. So it's this area, right? That was phase 2, which definitely does start around in this right here. But this is the property that's being dedicated. It's like 230,000 square feet. It's a sizable piece of property. To the middle of the river channel. See there, all these properties go to the middle of the river channel. That's their description. So sometimes the middle of the river channel is, where's that at? So our surveyor's done what surveyors do and just determine where that is. And so this blue line here, kind of the center of the river channel, goes through here and then over to a point that was agreeable to them, not up to their back door, but some point here, kind of along this line, basically, to where we want to put the trail. So that's what's being donated today as well.
So the part of the deed is from the middle of the river channel.
Correct.
Towards their property.
Towards their property,
right.
That's correct.
So it's not
within the tree line.
Within the tree line. It's all
in
tree
the athletic
line.
fields or.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't affect any of their developable property or their buildings or any of their equipment or soccer fields or anything. It's all just in the tree line. Right.
And that doesn't affect this transaction, but if you go back to the prior slide, it looks like as we get to the east down there, that the trail gets much closer to some of those properties.
It does.
Yeah. So
it does. And these are probably the most.
Would probably be Jeff Wells's property.
Yes.
Like
yeah. Those properties are the toughest to navigate. We do actually, this plat has a trail easement in there. So it helps that there was already one dedicated anyway, and in the spot that it's dedicated is worse than we were proposing where to put it. So that's helped my negotiating strategy. But at the end of the day, it's still closer to their property than they probably ever wanted it to be.
Approximately how far will that trail be from like Jeff Wells's office? And if you don't know, that's fine.
I don't. I have that. I don't have that today. But we've worked with him quite a bit to get it in a place that's he's fine with. He's actually happy with. He just doesn't want to lose all those trees, and so we're working through the. You can kind of go to that, but he's got a. Let's see. This is his. Is this right here? So he's got kind of a conference room here that looks out over the river channel, but our trail will be down in the channel. The channel's huge in that area, so we're actually going to be down such that a person walking wouldn't even be able to see in
but
there.
You keep the trees to the north.
Keep the trees to the north. That is exactly right. He was very excited.
Okay.
Definitely is very persistent on that for good reason. And we think we've got a plan that'll work for him there. We're not as close to Jet and Coxel here, and again, we're down in the channel. And then as we get out of the channel, which, man, my machine isn't working here. It's as we kind of come out of the channel here. The channel's really large in here, and we kind of come out of it here. But we're just up in a massive forest at that point. So either way, you wouldn't even be able to see the trail in this area as we kind of work from this way to the west.
So how much of the clearing is complete in their section? Is it?
About 1,000 feet so far. About 1,000 feet so far.
Okay.
From right here, this phase 1 marker right there, all the way west, keep going there, Jacob, all the way to about right here. A little bit
Okay.
past, where the blue line starts there. That was our first acquisition of the Y property, or their first donation. And this part, this part in here, like I said, this is all parkland, rivers. It's called Linkle Park.
So as this project keeps going, we'll have to do this acquisition on each parcel?
Yeah, we authorizing the city manager to do it, but eventually, yeah, each time we have to accept it, just like today. So
Right.
no matter what we end up with, we'll have to come back to you okay, we accept that. So you'll know what every property was, and it'll get accepted into the city
There are
city
some
property.
instances where we own what we need, but
Right.
there's a lot of this.
Right. Yeah, you can kind of, we're setting precedent. That's why it's taken a while. It's a good point, because we're trying to come up with a document that kind of helps cover us for the whole, 7 miles of river channel here, because it's going to be a lot of area, and each one is fairly unique, I guess. We're going to be close to some properties, and sometimes we're just going to be out in the woods.
Will all the deeds have that reversionary clause in there like this one does?
That's the intention is that this serves as the template.
Okay.
There may, I don't know, there may be a unique circumstance that changes for that particular circumstance, but that's the intent.
So we get to mile 4.2 and no one cooperates, what's the plan?
You have to wait until we get to mile 4.2, and we'll get back to you.
Okay.
It may be a route deviation, it may be condemnation.
Yeah, it's the 3 options typically. You can donate, we can pay them for it, or we can condemn it. So we have all of those, and I think it's what you start out with, and then you hope to get to something everybody can live with.
All right. Any questions from the public?
It's right behind you.
Okay, thank you. I'll be back.
Ben Winhill, Salina. What's the timeline you're going to start on this? Is this incorporated after the river has been dredged? Or is this before? This is before? Okay, so in the river project, they said that they needed from the center of the river 20 feet both ways, 40 feet wide. So isn't that going to infringe, if you're putting in a concrete walking trail, isn't that going to infringe on what the construction company needs to be able to dredge the river, clear the trees and everything else? My opinion, or it looks to me like you're doing this a little backwards if you're putting in a trail now and not having the river completely dredged in that area, because dredging in that area is going to be significant, because we already know over by Ohio, where it goes underneath, it's 8 feet of sediment that needs to be taken out of there. So I'm taking it that most of that's all the way across, clear around YMCA. So my question is, why are you doing phase 1, phase 2 of the trails now when you don't even have a river yet?
I've had the same thought.
Dan, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. Jacob, could you go back to that second slide? Just kind of get a dimension here, it'll show you. But yeah, it's a good question. We don't want to have to blow away a bunch of 10-foot concrete trail to redo the river channel, so you are correct. That's not a good idea, but as you can see here, this dimension here is 100 feet. So we're getting about 100 feet from the center of the channel there. And every one of these properties, actually, the Y already donated an access easement for us to get into the channel to the east of this area on the last time they donated property. So we're thinking about access to the river channel, because we're going to have to dredge it, like Mr. Winhold said, and of areas where we don't want to build the trail really close to the dredging area, really close to the river. In this case, the trail is quite a ways from. It's up on the bank. It's far enough away from the dredging that it shouldn't be affected. Down where Wells's property is, it's closer, so we're having to really dial that in a lot tighter, because it is pretty tight in that area, because it's a steep channel and it's tighter, but in this area, you can just see it's kind of, the channel's over here where this blue line is, 20 foot each side of that, and we're still 80 foot each way, each on one side of that, so we're quite a ways away from any work that's going to be done in the channel. But it's good to have the property, because now we can actually dredge the channel.
Shouldn't this be coordinated with the engineering firm that's going to do the work?
Yes, they did the design on all these trails. That's the design we're using to acquire these properties.
But I guess I'm going with Mr. Winholt's comment that equipment-wise, coming across the trails and in and out.
That's where the access points come in, but we have been in close coordination with the design firm in terms of the anticipated topography and work that has to be done. There is a sense of urgency to try to get trails going. We're trying to take advantage of donors, but I think there's been enough planning that this isn't viewed as being imprudent in terms of taking into account the location of the trail and the work that's to be done in the river in conjunction with the trail.
Right, any other questions, comments?
I've had conversations numerous times with both.
Could you
I'm
give
Janie
it-
Anderson,
Thanks.
6360 East Iron Avenue, from the Friends of the River Foundation, and many conversations with both Martha and Eric Dove, Martha Tasker. This is designed to be able to be built before the river is dredged. That was the whole plan that they built. They designed it so we could do a piece of the trail on purpose. So
this will just be a small piece to kick off the project.
Yeah, I wouldn't think, there'll be a lot of areas that we can't do this type of trail. Until you do the dredging, you're definitely correct. But yeah, this was kind of Friends in the River wanted to, 5 years ago now, it's been a while, but they said, where could we start? Where's a good spot? And we ended up getting some funding for this portion, so then we were able to get it designed. So this was an area that seemed like a good first step and a showcase to say, okay, we can start this project, and here's a trail that we can build, get some access points, and get it kind of started and not interfere with future development. Basically, this is it's precedent setting too, because it gets us the access points which we need. And a lot of times to get over a trail, you just buffer it with a pile of dirt so you don't kill the trail when you're driving trucks over it. So there's a lot of ways to, once we have the access into the river, which we do now, and we'll have the trees cleared, we'll have a nice way to get dirt in and out of that river. It's going to help us in the long run for when we actually do dredge the river. So hopefully that's the point of the planning and the HDR studies, so thank you.
Well, the smell down there it's not going to be a trail I'm going to want to take.
can I come up one more time? Is that okay? Jane Anderson, 6360 East Iron. The other thing about easements, this just happened to be a piece where there's a lot of private property, but a lot of the trail design is on city property. Not completely, but if you think of Lakewood, Oakdale, around the TPAC Center, those are city properties already. It doesn't mean there isn't easement issues with pieces of it, but the city already owns about 75% of the riverway. So we do know that was consideration when they were designing trails in the first place, to try to use as much city property as possible. So even though we are going to probably have some easement issues sometimes, a lot of it really is on city property already.
All right, thanks for that information. Well, hearing no other questions or comments, bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I move we authorize the mayor to accept property from the YMCA, to authorize the city manager to accept subsequent properties and execute 6 agreements with property owners upon fulfillment of all prerequisites under the purchasing policy.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept donated property from the YMCA for Phase 2 of the Smoky Hill River Greenway Trail, and authorize the city manager to accept Phase 1 property and execute 6 agreements with property owners upon fulfillment of all prerequisites under the purchasing policy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We will move to 6.2.
Item 6.2, authorize the city manager to execute renewals of agreement for administrative services for a self-funded health and prescription benefit plan and individual and aggregate stop-loss coverage with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas.
Ms.
Good
Fisher.
evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Before you is consideration to renew the agreement with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas. Currently, the city is self-funded, and we have been since 1997. What we contract with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas for is administrative claims, meaning they process all of our claims on our behalf, as well as provide us stop-loss coverage for our health insurance fund. Our health insurance fund is a fund where we contribute dollars rather than premiums going directly to an insurance company. Each month, we set aside premium dollars internally for all of our employees. The employees kick in a portion of that as well. And then also with our plan, we cover our subgroups, by subgroups meaning the public library, the airport authority, and the housing authority. And then any of our retirees that elect coverage and former employees that are choosing COBRA coverage to transition to other coverage after they leave our employ. So we use those funds. We pay Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas to, again, process the claims and provide a stop loss. And then also we are eligible then as part of one of their plans to get the network discounts, that is substantial discounted savings in relation to other plans out on the market. With that stop loss, there are two different aspects to that stop loss coverage. We have our individual stop loss, which would mean stop loss coverage for one individual covered by our plan. And I'm going to compare stop loss coverage to be like a high deductible, meaning currently if claims go above $150,000 for that one individual, then that is capped expenses, and Blue Cross then picks up the tab for the rest of it. And then also aggregate stop loss, meaning stop loss for our entire plan for the year, meaning if we had just a really bad claims year where every, or I shouldn't say every, but if we had a lot of claims, much higher than expected, currently it's at 130% of what is projected for our claims year. If we would exceed that, those claims would be capped at that point too, which both of those two aspects together just give us some financial security that we're not going to bankrupt that health insurance fund on any given year. The rates are pooled, so meaning when Blue Cross gives us a renewal, it isn't just the city of Salina's experience. They do look at other entities within Kansas and assign ratings that way. That should also provide us some stability in years where we have a volatility and higher than usual claims, that it's not going to spike. The theory is it provides a little more even claims or stop loss renewal just by that pooling aspect. I guess one other thing that I will note with the plan that I think is significant for us, in addition to it being health insurance, we also incorporated the prescription benefit beginning February of 2021. So the current 2022 plan year is the first year that we have had a full 12-month plan year where prescription coverage is under Blue Cross as well. And then in looking at our plan versus what is allowable under the Affordable Care Act, the maximum out-of-pocket for an individual with our plan is currently $5,000 and $10,000 for family, in comparison to current year with out-of-pocket maximums for the Affordable Care Act, $8,700 and $17,400 respectively. Our renewal proposal, which I'll get to a little bit more, does keep $5,000, $10,000 levels, and Affordable Care Act maximums are increasing for 2023 to $9,100 and $18,200. When we received our renewal options, we are looking at a substantial increase, and I guess I'll refer to the table on page 4 that summarizes our options for us. To stay at our same stop-loss level, which is $150,000 per individual, we're looking at almost a 19% increase, and that's in fixed costs, not just dependent upon claims. So they also proposed a couple of different renewal options to save some fixed costs, to save in that premium amount. Again, this is focusing on the individual stop loss. If we were to move from a $150,000 stop loss to a $175,000 stop loss, we're looking at I'm going to say close to an even renewal. There's still about a $14,000 increase there. Or to move to a $200,000 stop loss, we do save around I'm going to ballpark $60,000, but that does take a substantial amount of increase in risk. When we first got together, we being our insurance consultant, Mr. Bob Charlesworth, and city staff, including the city manager, when we first looked at our renewal options, some of the ideas that were tossed around were to come up with maybe a multi-year approach, or to see if we do move to a higher stop-loss level, if we would be offered any discounts. Blue Cross just recently came back to us and did say that they would offer a little bit of a discount in the form of a premium holiday. So when you take a look at the adjusted numbers on page 5 in the table in the staff report, it does compare that. The first discount that was offered was if we would remain at our current level, they would give us $50,000 premium holiday for January of 2023. And then if we were going to move to the $2,100 level in 2024, they would apply a $75,000. I will say, I just learned before I came down to the meeting that they were also willing, new information, they were willing to apply the $50,000 premium holiday for 2024 if we end up moving to a $175,000. So it doesn't necessarily impact this renewal from a financial standpoint directly, but down the road. In the subsequent plan year, if we were to renew with Blue Cross, there is some savings at that level there. When I mentioned the renewal, even factoring in the dollar amounts, again, we were looking at a slight increase, but the recommendation is for the city to move to a $175,000 stop-loss level. It does take on a little bit of risk, but in working through this with Mr. Charlesworth, and I failed to mention that he is joined us via Zoom as well, it felt like it was the right level and the right time to move to that increase in stop loss. The increase would give us a projected premium or fixed cost of $8,739. Again, it was just an exchange for maybe taking on a little more risk rather than having fixed costs that we knew we would be obligated for them. In February of 2021, we did get a health fund management policy approved, and in doing so, it set up specific calculations on what to use in terms of what our minimum and maximum fund balances should be in terms of trying to plan for our target fund. These are estimates only based on a $175,000 renewal, and these will change slightly after we have a couple of more months of claims in, but tentatively, or at least just to give an estimate, our fund balance for that $175,000 stop-loss level, we're looking at $2.3 million to $2.8 million. We do currently have a $3.5 million fund balance. Along with the 2023 budget, we did not propose an increase to premiums, knowing that we were trending a little ahead with the current plan, that we were setting well. But So staff does feel like we have the capacity to cover even if our claims increase around $500,000. We will come back after we have those calculations to report out what those are. Tentatively, it'll probably be mid-February before we have the numbers finalized in accordance with what that target fund balance should be, to see if there's any additional action that is needed within that that fund policy. There are a number of different options that the commission could authorize the city manager to take, but a lot of it's going to depend on what that what our fund level looks like and what our target fund minimum and maximum is when we finalize that. Overall, staff believes it's a good thing to renew with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas. Solid claims processing, and our employees tend to be satisfied with the level of coverage and the care that they receive in the customer service. So I did mention Mr. Charlesworth is on the line. Also, our Blue Cross Blue Shield rep, Andrew Gutierrez, has joined us via Zoom. And then internally in my staff, our benefits coordinator, Jennifer Perry, is here also if you have any questions.
Any questions?
You're taking on the higher risk. Is the city have any health incentive plans, programs for employees?
We don't have what I would say full structured wellness programs. We have offered different incentives, and I don't want to say full-on programs, but small incremental things from time to time in the past. The engagement level was not high. Different types of health fairs, other incentives, we were getting about the same 28 to 30% of our plan members to participate. We hadn't focused on direct wellness per se as the last few years. I would say our best option that we transitioned to was Tria Health, which is a company that reduces the amount of risk and supports our employees in another facet. I guess in terms of prescription compliance, it's a form of wellness, but not just wellness across the board. We've talked about increasing those, but that just has not been our focus as of late.
Because I have a philosophy, if I don't meet my deductible, I call that a win. So I like to stay out of the doctor's office.
Kind of a segue into one of my questions. A lot of people did stay out of doctor's offices the last 3 years. And I don't know if Mr. Charlesworth or Mr. Gutierrez, are you seeing this pent-up medical service demand materializing to where we should expect our claims to go up next year?
I can speak from Blue Cross's standpoint that we have seen claims come back to pre-pandemic levels. We are also seeing studies being done about the impacts of those delayed services on existing conditions or yet diagnosed conditions.
Right. And some people, as an example, are showing up with cancers in later stages because they didn't go in for more routine testing. And when we look at that fund balance, I'm a little hesitant to even entertain dropping it next year, because next year is going to be the year when theoretically folks will start showing back up with stuff they should have been showing up with last year.
Yeah, and I will say Mr. Charlesworth and I did have a conversation about that, and I'll let him share what he shared with me.
Thanks, Natalie. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I'm in an ICU waiting room. Kind of caps exactly what you were talking about, Mr. Mayor. Delay of care, waiting on care, and then bad things happen. So almost every one of my clients this last year has had an impact of seeing large claims this past year. And it's not so much the $200,000 claims, it's the claims between $35,000 and $75,000. They're just voluminous. And so that's impacting the overall cost. And when we look at the city-specific experience on large claims, we're very comfortable moving to the 175 level, being eligible for a $50,000, essentially a premium holiday in January of 2024. But the point is, getting people the care that they need. TRIA is a great option for pharmacy, but we've got to get people back in the doctor's office, and Andrew's right. There's a lot of studies going on right now. Is it delay because of COVID or what? But it's a real thing right now. So we're trying to get that under wraps.
Okay. Thank you. I take it from your comment that when we've gone over the 150, we've gone well over the 175 as well, or?
That is correct, sir.
Okay.
But again, we see very few with the city. The city's been very good about that. But usually when they go poorly, they go extremely poorly. And that's why the city purchases the protection. And Mr. Mayor, you may recall that we rolled the RX in specifically for the stop loss protection, because for years the city did not purchase such. It was managed very well, but with the cost of drugs, orphan drugs, and other high dollar drugs, the protection needs to be there for the city. So that's part of the development of the stop loss premiums. We saw a first year kind of immature number with new claims just starting to develop. And now those are fully developed. The beautiful part about it, when folks take a brand drug or a specialty drug, Blue Cross does have rebate potentials that they share with the city, and that's already been pre-negotiated, and that does help financially the city in their overall funding. But it's delayed a few months, obviously, because rebates are typically quarterly.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Yeah, just to go back, and Mr. Charlesworth may have answered this. So if we go with the 175 and we keep the 175 next year, we'll get the $50,000 discount.
That is my
One that you said
I'll
you
let
just
Andrew
received.
answer that. But my understanding is that you would get that, or if you even move to a higher retention next year, you would be eligible for that.
That's correct. Yeah, we would honor it at the $175,000 mark, or potentially a higher stop loss if you chose to do that in 2024.
Thank you.
One thing I will add on that I hadn't had a chance to discuss with Bob, Jennifer was sharing some reports with me earlier today, and we're expecting around 4, I say around 4, we have 3 for certain, likely a 4th individual that will exceed the stop loss for 2022. 3 out of those 4 largely due to very expensive name brand drugs.
And I think you've just answered my next question. The pharmacy and the medical care expenses are combined into one individual max for each patient, as far as the stop loss is
That is
calculated?
correct.
Okay. Yes, surgeries don't cost that much nowadays. It's the medication afterwards.
Yeah, and the thing I liked, even though we're self-insuring, is the fact that we get the network discount that Blue Cross Blue Shield negotiates, correct?
Yes.
Is that the way I understood that? Which a lot of employees don't realize the dollar savings that does for them.
It's substantial.
Significant, huh?
Yes, it is
Yeah.
substantial.
Yeah.
Right, any questions from the public? Don't see any hands raised online. So any further discussion, bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor Davis, I move that we authorize the city manager to execute an agreement to provide administrative services for a self-funded health and prescription benefit plan with individual and aggregate stop-loss coverage with Blue Cross Blue Shield with the 50/50 cost-share plan structure with an increase in stop-loss at $175,000.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to take recommended action number 2, authorize the city manager to execute an agreement to provide administrative services for a self-funded health and prescription benefit plan with individual and aggregate stop-loss coverage with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas with the 50/50 cost-share plan structure with an increase in stop-loss at $175,000. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Charlesworth, Mr. Gutierrez, for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move to 6.3.
Item 6.3, authorize city manager to renew an agreement for life insurance benefits with MetLife.
Thank you again, Mayor and Commissioners. This renewal is a little less complex. This is for our group life insurance coverage that we offer to our employees. It is based on annual salary, and we have offered it for many years. This year, the renewal did come back with a slight increase, changing from 14 cents per $1,000 of coverage to 15 cents per $1,000 of coverage. And as a result, we asked Hardman, who currently brokers that on our behalf, actually I said their former name, they are now Gallagher, to go out to bid for us to see if we could do better. Unfortunately, there were none of the companies that they asked to provide a quote. None of them offered. They all declined based on, they said they couldn't compete with what our current renewal was. So we really don't have options in terms of at this point. Our option is to either renew or to offer or to decline to offer that coverage. During the budget process, we typically will budget a few cents above that $1,000 of coverage rate. So historically, we've, over the last few years, rather than budget at 15 or 14 cents, we have been budgeting at 18 cents. This allows for the additional dollar amounts that are assessed due to the dependent coverage that's also allotted to our employees with dependents. We anticipate the overall expense that we budgeted to be about $53,000. That does include filling some of our vacancies back at the time where we were creating that estimation. I will note, if you do the math and you think that seems kind of low, I will just offer the bit of detail that not every payroll dollar results in us assessing premiums. It's really those that we say impact our base salary coverage. So if someone does a vacation buyback, if someone gets paid out after being a retiree and having those additional dollars, or even longevity payments, those types of payroll dollars aren't driving the amount of premium that we pay. So it is a little bit better if you go back to compare to what our overall wages were budgeted. It's not a direct calculation. It's because of those things that are excluded when it comes time to pay our bill with our life insurance coverage. So at this point, I would happy to answer any questions and the recommendations. The one thing I didn't mention, when we did have a 1 cent per $1,000 increase, when we asked if they would consider at least giving us a multi-year agreement, they did offer to lock this rate in for 2 years. So that would be the recommendation, to move forward with a 2-year rate for our life insurance. But it would be within your purview to only commit us for 1 year, or to postpone, or to vote at this point to not offer it moving into 2023.
I'm guessing we haven't seen that rate go down before, have we?
We have, in the past, when we went out to bid and we changed companies, we actually got a cent or two, but it's been several years. And I really can't complain. I think I showed what we've been paying since at least 2010, and we really haven't seen an increase there.
So I'd probably be for going for the 2 years if we're gonna do it.
Yeah, I figure the price isn't going down.
That's what I said. That's what I was asking. It didn't look like it from what I was looking at.
Did this factor in the wage plan?
Not in the wage plan itself, but it was in the annual budget that was tied to wages. So indirectly, yes, because if we're increasing payroll dollars in certain areas, we're also calculating more premiums for the company.
All right, any questions from the public or comments? Right, bring it back to the commission for action.
Mayor, I moved to authorize the city manager to renew life insurance with MetLife for 2 years.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to authorize the city manager to renew life insurance with MetLife for 2 years. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Thank you. We are going to go to other business in just a second. I want to ask the city manager if there was, our 2 proposed executive sessions later on, a time limit for the first and the second, and if outside persons are coming to the first, just because I'm assuming number 1's longer than number 2, and we could...
My best guess on number 1 is about 20 minutes, and other than city manager's office staff and legal counsel, don't expect any outside parties. And then the second one, I'll defer to you.
Okay. Wait, if the first was much longer, I was going to give our staff the opportunity to leave.
To reverse them?
Reverse them.
I see.
That's, okay. Other business?
Have none.
Okay, well, that's short. Citizens Forum. This is an opportunity for anyone to come to the podium to address an issue of your concern. Again, just try to keep an eye on the 3-minute clock, but it looks like you don't have much competition, so we're not going to cut you off at 3:01.
That's well, first thing Ben Winholtz, that's the first thing I was going to ask is you take away the 3 minutes there. Since I seem to be the lone wolf today, I know how Mr. Longbind feels now, being the lone wolf. All right, Saturday morning, Salina 311, one of the media sites here in Salina, came out with an interesting story. If you didn't see it, I'm going to give you the highlights of exactly what it said. The tennis center is done. All that's left is to complete a few punch list items and pass the final inspection on to the city. Then the gates will be open for players, spectators, and tennis enthusiasts alike. When that day comes, Salina Tennis Alliance will make the announcement via their social media channels. Since winter is coming fast, STA will be taking down 9 of the 12 nets in just a few weeks. This is done to help extend the life of both the nets and the net posts, as the weight of snow and ice can really do some damage over time. But don't worry, they will leave nets up on 3 of the courts all winter long. If you happen to be bold and brave enough to play this winter, you still have that chance. So on my way over here today, I took the long way and went by all of the other tennis facilities here in town, being it private and public, to see if any of these facilities got the Save the Nets memo from STA. South's recent gift, which was the Jerry Ivey courts, is no longer there. It's been demoed. It's being reconstructed right now as we speak. Kansas Wesleyan needs to get the memo. Centrals have their nets down, and Oakdale is down. All of the nets at Oakdale's are down. I don't know if this is because the city did this on a regular basis each winter, or if they've taken them down because they no longer want them played because the courts aren't really usable, and they need to redo, my understanding, part of them for pickleball courts, which is a great thing. 2 questions that I have before I get into my spiel is, so if STA is so adamant about the protecting of the new complex, protecting the nets, why don't you take down all 12 of the nets? And on top of that, how is the public supposed to access these 3 courts with a locked 6-foot chain link fence around the whole complex? Now, I'm going to get into a little bit later of what...
We're going to give you a few extra seconds, but we do have other business.
Okay. All right. So, according to the tennis complex study session that was a couple of months ago, once the city takes back the deed from STA, the club will run every aspect of the complex and will keep courts available to the public if they're not reserved or being used at the public's requested time slot. So it looks to me like that 9 courts are mainly available to STA only. And that's to justify their $2.4 million carrot that was dangled in front of the city donkey. In the next few months, the best is yet to come, because STA made it crystal clear known that the clubhouse, at this study session, that the clubhouse needs to be renovated at an estimated cost of almost $1 million for the club to operate the facility the correct way. The partnership between the city and STA does not include this renovation except for the city's obligation of cleaning the building and fixing a few windows and partial fascia at around $35,000, which is part of the $860,000 cost that the taxpayers put into this complex. So, I don't know where to end this since I have to end it early, but it looks to me like the good old boys got their dream again via the city, and 9 of those courts will be for STA. The other 3 will be available. STA told us, the main guy told us that tennis is vibrant in Salina. Man, if the USD 305 keeps to their word of keeping their four courts that they got public, there's only going to be 7 courts, it looks like, that's going to be available to city when we were at 15 at one time. So, time will tell.
Probably the only question that I can maybe get a quickly distilled answer would be access to the courts is through Salina Tennis.
Reservations are.
Reservations are, and they provide a code to get into the.
Right. First
court.
off, the facilities have been locked while they're under construction. The announcement is that they're nearing completion and they will be available. The timing's a little awkward in that we're going into the off-season. The 9 versus 3 is not a city versus STA. It's a seasonal decision, and staff will work with them in terms of scheduling and ensuring availability. If we have feedback or if we have some assessment that we should leave more nets up through the off-season, that's a conversation that can be had, but it's kind of a calculated assessment of how many people are going to be playing tennis in December, January, February in that off-season.
Okay, thank you.
So the gates will be unlocked 24/7 during the winter, basically, for the 3 courts that are available?
I'm not prepared to say 24/7. For security reasons, we're also installing cameras so that we don't have vandalism and damage. But the intention is that they will be unlocked during designated hours to be available for the public.
With no lighting at night, so you're not going to leave them open at night. But you have the lighting.
Yeah, there's light standards there.
Mm-hmm. And STA is running the whole thing, so are they going to be on site during this time, during these open hours, or because they don't have a clubhouse?
Yeah.
It doesn't have heat, it doesn't have anything, it's just a block building.
We entered into an agreement with them previously. They have an operational obligation. The clubhouse issue is something that's ongoing, but that their expectation is to provide services. The clubhouse is a whole separate and distinct phase.
And that, I hope the transparency basically comes into play with you guys having to vote to who's going to fund this, basically, because STA has already got an estimate of $750 million.
Those discussions are ongoing, so
Yeah, and
We'll
that
have
type of
to
funding decision certainly comes before this
deal with
body.
that.
I think
Okay.
maybe next month after the facility's actually open, we ought to get an update from Salina Tennis.
That sounds like a good idea.
And I don't, and I'm talking to the city manager, you can sit down. And I don't remember that there was ever a discussion that they'd have somebody there 24 hours a day or 7 days a week. So I think that was an assumption that's incorrect. And I'm not following the 9-3 is 9 of the courts are STA and 3 of the city. I think that was done to protect the nets. I think that, again, is an assumption that's
Yeah, I think it's
verified.
a reasonable estimate of how many courts would get used in the
Yeah.
off-season.
Yeah. Well, the camera's up yet?
I know the conversation's been ongoing. I don't know their status, but it's in the works.
All right. Looking like you're the only citizen here, so I'm going to go ahead and close this section. And with the other commissioners' permission, I'm going to reverse the order of the executive sessions. And request number 10.2 go first for
How much time?
10 minutes.
Mayor, I move the city commission recess into executive session for 10 minutes to discuss the city manager's evaluation based upon the need for to discuss personal matters of non-elected personnel pursuant to KSA 74-4319B1. The open meeting will resume in this room at 5:12.
10 minutes. I guess that would be,
Well, I was spotting a little time there.
okay, so 5:07 then, all right. And just in case, okay, and that's KSA 75-4319, just so we have the right number in there. And Natalie Fisher, the Human Resource Director, will be in the room with us. This is moved and seconded to recess into executive session for 10 minutes to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel as described. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will be back in 10 minutes. All right, we are back on air, and we'll enter. And there was no action to be taken in the general meeting after the first executive session. There's a request for a second executive session, listed as 10.1.
That's 20 minutes.
Yes, please.
Mayor, I move the City Commission recess into executive session for 20 minutes for the preliminary discussions regarding the governing body's wishes to pursue the potential acquisition of specific real estate based upon the need for preliminary discussion of the acquisition of real property pursuant to KSA 75-4319B6. The open meeting will resume in this room at 5:30.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to recess into executive session for discussions regarding real estate based on the need to meet with legal counsel. I would suppose you're going to be with us, City Attorney?
I believe that is the plan.
Okay.
But this is a different justification for the executive session than what we more commonly see. It is, but it is based on the opportunity to discuss the potential acquisition of real estate without identifying the property. It's deemed to be in the public interest for you all to have that opportunity when it's a preliminary, at the preliminary stages.
All right. Thank you. I can't improve upon that description. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're in executive session until 5:30. Okay, we are back in a regular session, and we do not have any action to take in public after executive session. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 5:30.